You are listening to the Audacious Ecosystem, the show where we learn together what it takes to make an ecosystem great from the leaders in your organizations around us. Lima. Hello.
Hi.
For those people listening at home that maybe don't know you just yet, but they'll definitely be interested in knowing you because you're an amazing human. Can you maybe share with us a little bit about your life history in Afghanistan?
My name is Lima Madomi. You can call me, of course, Lima. I was born and raised in Afghanistan. I was born in Kabul, in the capital. I was raised there. I did my schooling there. I did my university there, my bachelor degree, and I studied like the 12 years in Afghanistan with in a woman school, like in a girls' school. In Afghanistan, the male and female schools are separated, so we are not studying in a joint schooling environment. Even before, it was like we study in different schools. There are girls' schools and boys' schools. I studied in a girls' school, and I was also graduated from Cardan University. I did a Bachelor of Computer Science from one of the private university, which is Cardan. I and I have been also actively working while studying, and because in Afghanistan you have an opportunity to study in the evening hours, so like after working hours. So I was working and I was also studying. So yeah, so I had quite a experience, and that's one of the reasons that is making me really sad looking back, because all these years, because when the US come, I was just 5 years old. When they come in 2000, I was
Oh,
five
really?
years old. Yeah, so I was 5 years old, and then like I grew up in this time period where the Taliban was not there, and then the schooling was starting, and all of these things. So I was like, all this was my life experience. I studied, I worked, I grew up in that environment, and then suddenly it all changing was a big hit.
I think it would be a great place to also offer some perspective because you said that when you were 5 years old, also Americans came to Afghanistan. Um, Maybe can you share with us what that actually meant for you, for your family? What were the differences before that with how your life looked like?
I don't remember a lot from the before that, because I was just 5 years old, so I was very little. But the only experiences that I remember that my mother also said, as a child, I was very afraid of Taliban. I'm not sure if I could say that, but I was really afraid of them. So because my mother said the story that once I was 2, 3 years old, and whenever I would hear that they are outside the house, so I'll be start screaming and hiding inside, like under the bed or somewhere. I will be trying to hide as a kid. And one day my father come, and he was like, "Oh no, it's not happening like this. I'm not accepting this. It's like she is way too scared, and someday she might see them on the street, and it might affect her mentally and physically and all." So he took me and he went next to their cars, because I am also coming from a Pashtun background. My parents are originally Pashtuns. So my father went to them, and he spoke with them in Pashto, and he said, like, my daughter, she's extremely scared of you, and she's just 3 years old, and when she hear your name, she just run and she cries and she screams and she hides. So he was like, "Oh, you don't have to be scared," and he tried to like pamper me a little bit, and like, "It's fine," the Talib which was there, and he was trying to like say these sweet things to make me like comfortable. That was one of the experience. And the second experience that I remember was like, as a child, I used to be like the TV, when we used to watch TV, so you were not allowed to have a TV at home. that's because I like TV. I love to watch what's in TV. So we didn't have any
Mm-hmm.
channels or anything, but we could have the VCR, like the tapes and the things to watch films and stuff. So we had TV at our home, but it was hidden. So it was in a room which was all covered. It didn't have window, the room, and we have to go to that room, and the windows should be closed. And we were risking our life having that because if we would be catch having that, we could be in prison. So we were hiding it in that place. you know I, I remember one of these houses that I had, and we had a room which had windows toward the street, but small windows on the upper side. So the toddler come and knocked on the door, and he was like, my uncle went and he was like, we know you have a TV at your home and you have like tapes or like these tapes that you have to put music, and we heard that you have something. And my uncle goes, no, we don't have any of those things. And I was looking from that window, standing on something. I was looking from that window outside, and and I was so scared, remembering that if they come inside and they check our house, they will find out about that. So these were some of the experience as a child that I had, and that's why I was extremely scared of them when they come also in 2021, because I still have that fear that if I face them, what will happen? Like, because I don't know, maybe because I haven't faced them in 2021, but like I just have this fear in me, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe as a child, my childhood memories are somewhere there, but also that the US bombards that were happening with their planes that were like happening. And I remember that like we had this thing that you will hear the sound of the plane, the sound that the plane is coming, and then after a few seconds there will be big sound of the bombs that will be dropped. So like if you hear the sound of the plane, after a few minutes you will have the sound of the bombs. So as a kid, I would like we were not sleeping in the main room. We had to sleep in the corridor because it was inside and it didn't have window. So if a bomb dropped in our yard or somewhere, so like the windows or the glasses could not harm us. So we were not allowed to sleep inside the rooms. We had to sleep inside the corridors. And so many nights I would not sleep, and I will be like, whenever I will hear the sound of a plane, I knew that after that there will be a sound of a bomb. So like in 2001, I was 6 years old. In 2000, I was like 5 years old, and they were like, if there is a sound of like plane, there is a sound of bomb. After when all of this finished for years, whenever I would hear a plane, I would be expecting a bomb after a sound of a bomb. So because there is a plane, there is always a bomb. For years, it was like a horrible experience.
Deeply sorry that that was your individual experience when you were growing up. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I think it was an experience which contributed to the person that you have built yourself into. And I think it was an experience which actually added towards your career development, because one of the first things that I wanted to touch on in your career path was that at some point you worked at an organization called TechWomen for a little bit, where you supervised and you managed the curriculum and the trainings for education for women in STEM. Um, while you were over there, what was something that surprised you or inspired you while you were working on the empowerment of women and girls in their careers?
Actually, what really always surprised me about women is the enthusiasm that they have toward the education and becoming someone that they want to be. That's something that always surprised me. It's not anything that I'm trying to be biased, but honestly, man doesn't have the same enthusiasm that a woman has when it comes, at least in Afghanistan, when it comes to the education sector, especially with STEAM. For example, when I was working with TechWomen and we were having these trainings and these curriculums and all of these uh, we had a lot of things. We had one project where we were trying to help women to write articles and these things. So we had interns where they were supposed to write a lot of articles and things. So in all of that, I've seen them for for all like for 1 year we had this very big project where there were 30 women and they were like extremely enthusiastic about what they wanted to be and how they wanted to improve. Like a huge excitement. Of course, I have to touch on the fact that the number of women in STEAM is much less than the number of men. It's all over the world, but in Afghanistan, it's considerably smaller than the men. Graduating from Bachelor of Computer Science, we only had 7 women in our bachelor program. Out of those 7 women, only 2 of us continue to be in this area. The rest 5 changed their profession. So it's considerably like smaller groups of women, and then they are becoming more enthusiastic about stuff to be like to be in STEAM, to work with technology, to have a lot of technological experiences, and to have the same spark because it's also because there isn't a lot of things for women in STEAM in Afghanistan. So that's also one of the things that they are not that. And if you are in that area, you have to be working a full-time job, which for an Afghan woman, it's very difficult because she's expected to be at home, to be taking care of the kids and all of these things.
And I think you said there's something that's extremely important in order to also offer a little bit of perspective for our conversation as well. This is not a trend that's only happening in one place of the world, it's a worldwide trend. Personally, I've been involved in organizing a conference on that matter. It's called WIDS, Women in Data Science, which also promotes the participation of women in STEM activities. It's a conference from Stanford. I highly suggest anybody attempts to join this conference. It's an amazing opportunity to meet absolutely fascinating individuals working in STEM. But during that time at TechWomen, did you get that picture solely in Afghanistan, or did you start to form that picture of women's wish to participate in STEM fields also from other countries or solely from Afghanistan?
Well, I would say from my current experience, for example, in Geneva University, where I am at the moment studying my master, it's the Centre Informatique de l'Université de Genève, which is the technological center of the Geneva University where I am doing my master. The number of females that I've seen, even here, is much smaller than the number of males. For example, in so many of my classes, maximum 2 women or 3 women. Like, I have only one class that we have 3 women. The rest, all other classes, we are just 2 or 1 or 2 or 1. Like that's the case almost everywhere, I would say. So it's not just Afghanistan, but it's a general term. But in Afghanistan, much more because it's like much more conservative country. So these types of jobs are not considered as womanly, if I would say so. So they don't really like that many women. If I may share an experience, it was I was working in IT. I was working in network, although it's not my area, but there was an office and I was working in IT. So I was basically responsible for a whole network, and I was the only one who was working in IT. And then I was trying to change the internet connection of the company because the previous provider was not giving the same bandwidth that they were promising. So I was asking for a change. And then this new company come and I was having, and they were trying to install the new internet. And I went on rooftop to fix the antenna with them. And they were looking at me and they were like, but you're not supposed to come on the rooftop with us. I was like, why not? And they were like, you were the first female we are seeing in the IT, and we are working with a lot of these organizations, and you are coming on the rooftop to fix the antenna. I was like, if I don't come, how I make sure that you are installing it appropriately and I won't have any problem in the future? And he was like, yeah, you could just maybe go to the first roof and you don't have to come to the top one, because then you're too high and you are on like rooftop. And he was like, you're not scared? No, why would I be scared of going on the rooftop to fix the antenna for the internet?
I think that story illustrates exceptionally well how there are inherent biases at the moment, which obviously should not be there, towards women in STEM. And that's a topic which I want to dive a little bit deeper into. But for the moment, just to go back on one thing you said a little bit earlier, um, you said that you also worked at Tech Nation. I believe that was somewhere around 2018 to 2019. Just to help us a little bit better, because I also have a high level of interest in the entrepreneurial ecosystems around the world, and I just want to understand a little bit better. What was the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Afghanistan like at the time that you worked there? Because I imagine from your responsibilities, you got a chance to get a pretty good image, a high level image of what the situation is in Afghanistan. So can you just share with us a little bit how that landscape looked like at that moment in time when you were there?
Actually, it was quite awesome. A lot of youth were interested in starting their own businesses than working for someone else. I had so many friends that quit their jobs and started working as entrepreneurs and started their own businesses. And there were a lot of other programs, like there were some programs that Technation was also having for having more entrepreneurs to start, and like giving them some mentorships and guiding them toward how to start their businesses, from where to start, how does it go. There were another program, I think it's an international, but it was also in Afghanistan. They were like startup weekend. There was like startup weekend that we had. I had the pleasure of being a mentor in one of the startup weekend sessions that they have for one day. I don't remember exactly. So a lot of people, they were extremely interested in starting their own businesses. They will be like having this idea, I want to do this, and they will be like starting different ideas, working on them. So the entrepreneurial area in Afghanistan prior to the Taliban, and especially in the year 2018 and 2019, when I was with Tech Nation and we were working with all this, there was a lot of entrepreneurs that like trying to start their business, especially youth. They were like really interested in starting their own businesses rather than working for a company or somewhere to be. They just wanted to have their own businesses.
It sounds like the ecosystem in Afghanistan was booming at that moment. Everything was going well and it was growing. And within that period of prosperity, if I remember correctly, in 2019, you got an opportunity, which we've foreshadowed a little bit in this conversation, and you moved to Switzerland to become a fellow at Internet Governance Forum. Amazing opportunity. But during that time, what was for you that experience like? What was it like from your perspective with all of the changes that I suppose happened in your life at that time in 2019?
Actually, when I received so I received this email about the Internet Governance Forum Secretariat having a fellowship for Afghans, especially they were emphasizing on women to apply for this, and because I have worked with the Internet Governance Forum of Afghanistan, because as a part of the NRI National Regional Internet Governance Forums, we had Afghanistan Internet Governance Forum also. So I was part of the Afghanistan Internet Governance Forum, and we were working with them. And when I received the email and I applied for it, and I received the call from Internet Governance Forum for like an interview, sort of to have a talk with them and everything. I sent my CV and everything. So and then I received a good news that I was accepted for the program and I could apply for a visa. First of all, I would say the visa process was head spinning. It was so complicated. It was so complicated that even the Internet Governance Forum Secretariat was surprised in Switzerland, because I applied for, I sent my documents in April. I received a response in April. I think April of end of March, something like that, but start of April or end of March. And I sent all my documents and the invitation letter and everything to the embassy, because we don't have any embassy of Switzerland in Afghanistan. We had it in Pakistan, so I was supposed to go to Islamabad for the visa process. I sent my document to Islamabad, and I asked them for because then they ask you for an interview to come in and give the documents in person. And when I asked for the interview to go and give, I received the interview, I think, in the month of July. So April, I sent an email and I received the interview in July, in 12th of July, I believe it was. So like, how many months there in between? And the IGF Secretariat was like, we want you to join as soon as possible. And they were so much emphasizing on the fact that I have to join as soon as possible. Believe me, I was so scared that because of the visa process, I will lose this opportunity and they will be like, it's taking way too long. And we are not going to wait for you that long. But surprisingly, they were extremely supportive, and they were so like they were like, it's fine, we will wait for you, you can go and you could apply. And I was so happy and so blessed, because the IGF Secretariat team was extremely supportive, and they were like, no problem, you could just go at the time of the interview, it's not a problem and it's fine. So with the IGF Secretariat, it was really nice inside with the staff. They were very supportive, very helpful. They tried as best as they could. Anya, she was trying as best as she could to help me find, because they also have this website that you could find from you in the apartments and everything. But uh, with all that, it was very difficult for me to adjust with this big change, because I was coming from a country like Afghanistan and then coming to a country like Switzerland and figuring out everything. For example, how to use the bus system. I didn't know how to use the bus system. In Afghanistan, we don't have that. So I really didn't know. And because I was in hostel, I had a plus point, because there were some students I could ask, and then they told me what to do and everything. Or I was way too lonely, because making friends in Switzerland is a very big thing. It's very difficult to make friends in Switzerland, because in general, culturally they are like that. They normally, the friends that they are having are not from like, they have this. I would say they are a little bit reserved in making friends. So normally you have to be introduced by someone, and then that someone will introduce you with like, you have to get introduced, and you can't just make friends. They don't talk with you or stuff like that. You have to be someone has to take you into the circle. Otherwise, and I heard that it's more because they are doing this because of the politeness, because they think that if they don't know the culture of that country that that person is coming from. So they might be a little disrespectful toward the culture or something because they don't know, and they try to be as polite as possible.
Whoa. Uh, that's a lot. And that sounds like quite an adventure just to start the process of moving. In 2019, you moved to Switzerland. 2020 comes, and we all know what happened with COVID. And then 2021 comes, and we know what happened in Afghanistan. Over a period of a few weeks, the US left the country, and within a matter of weeks, or rather days, the Taliban took over. And I remember that moment from my experience, just being online at that time, seeing videos of people, of hundreds and thousands of people jumping the fences at airports, just trying to get a chance to get out of the country at that time. And there were thousands of people just attempting to find a plane or any way to get out. At that time, from what I understand, you were in Switzerland. But your family wasn't in Switzerland. Did any of your loved ones then or afterwards have a chance to leave the country? What was the situation like for them?
Actually, when the I think you mentioned a very good point about the fact that people were going and trying to leave, even going over the fences and everything. I think that that makes a very great point about the horror of the people of like having Taliban back in Afghanistan. So like how much people of Afghanistan were scared that they were ready to risk their life at that point, but just to be able to leave the country. So like Taliban, just to be clear, Taliban was never the choice of the Afghan people, and they never choose them, and that by itself shows how scary it was for them. Coming to the second thing that you said about my family, yes, my family was in Afghanistan. My whole, like, apart from my distant family, my mother and my sister was in Afghanistan. And first thing, I don't have any brother, and we are just two sisters. And my father also died in 2014. So it was just my sister and my mother in Afghanistan. And being two women in Afghanistan, to like for me, being here, just thinking about the fact that Taliban will be here, and my sister was at the last semester of her university, and she was supposed to finish her university, and she was waiting for exams to finish the university. And my mother was also working. My mother is my mother works, so just thinking about the fact that the Taliban will come and they will take over, and my family will be there, two women that they won't be able to work, and how they are supposed to feed themselves, how they are supposed to prepare something for themselves to eat if they are not supposed to work. My sister is not supposed to study. Just thinking about that, my mother was trying to give me like it's fine, but I was way too sad and scared. So I started this thing to start sending emails to anyone possible that I could imagine, to all of these organizations that I have worked with prior to coming here, which was including US. I work with USAID. I work with Denmark. I work with all of these international organizations, and I was sending emails to all these embassies and asking them for help. Like I sent email also to Switzerland embassy because I was here, that if they could help with my family to come to Switzerland. But the only thing that Switzerland embassy told me is that they do not have any evacuation plans, so they cannot, because in one of the projects that I work with Swiss Development Cooperation in Afghanistan. So I work in a project with Swiss Development Cooperation. So I was like, yeah, I worked with Swiss, and my family is there. Well, U.S. embassy, they told me that they could do it because I was eligible for a few visa programs that they had because I work with USAID. So they said, well, you are eligible, but you are not in the country yourself. So we cannot help your family because they didn't work. It was you who worked and you are not in the country. And you are in safety, so we can't help your family. And I was thinking at that point, if there would be a way that I could return to Afghanistan just to help my family, so because I worked in all these organizations, so if because of me they could go somewhere, but it was not happening. And then one of my aunts, she worked, she was a journalist, and at that point, one of the biggest category that was under threat was journalists, and she had previously sent some emails to Canadian embassy for helping her to get out of the country. So she received an email from Canadian embassy asking her to come with all her family, all her loved ones and family. It doesn't matter if it's sister, if it is like as long as she could come with them, they will accept them and we could send their names. And they had these forms, they were very complicated forms, and I had to sit for 24 hours without sleeping to fill those forms for them because they were at home, and I have a huge family because my aunts, my uncles, all of them wanted to come with that process. And it was possible for my that aunt who was a journalist to put them in those forms because the Canadian embassy gave them that option that you could put your brothers, sisters, niece and nephews, anyone you want, but you have to fill these forms and you have to say all their information and everything, and you have to send. And the forms were way too, for one person I have to fill 3 forms, each form 3 pages. So like I had 11 people that I have to fill those forms for because they didn't have a stable internet. So I have to fill those forms, write letters and everything. I have to do all that, and I have to send it from my aunt's email to the embassy. And after like 5 days, like there were 5 days left until end of August, they received an invitation to go to the airport. To go to the airport in that whole mess and to cross and to leave the country. And the thing which was my grandma, she is in wheelchair, and one of my uncle has babies. Like his youngest child was 3 years old. So having these little kids with you and an elderly woman in wheelchair to cross that mist that was around the airport and go inside the Canadian embassy was impossible. And when they went the first day that they tried to go, they managed to cross. They went like middle of the night, like I don't know, at 9 o'clock at night, and they were able to cross there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and just go to the door of the airport to be able to enter. But the thing was that when they went there, the documents that they have that were giving them permission to enter, in that documents, one of my uncle's document, they were not accepting that because his name was not in their list. And I was in communication with one of these guys in Qatar because Canadians were working from Qatar and they were having this whole process. And I was sending him a message that they are not letting my family to enter. And he was like, but I sent their names. There must be, but it was a chaos. So in that chaos, maybe the Canadian forces, there was so much chaos that they were not able to check properly the names and everything, so they could. And that guy from Qatar was telling me that actually I sent their names, and he was like, okay, write all their names again, and I'm gonna resend it right now, and I'm gonna resend it to them so that they could be let to enter the. But until he sent the names and everything, the Canadian forces entered back inside the airport and they closed the door and they didn't let my family to enter. They were only letting a few of my family members, but they were like, if you're not letting all of us to enter, then we are not going only two, three of us, because then it's like not good, because if two, three goes and the rest is outside, it doesn't make sense. So they went two, three times again after that, and then on the day of the blast, that there was a blast also happened in that area. The blast, I think, happened in the evening. My family was in exact same area in the morning, trying to enter to the airport, but they were not able to enter. But at the end, they couldn't enter to the airport, and then they went to, but all borders were also closed, so they couldn't go anywhere. Then there was the only border that was the border of Spin Boldak, which is in Kandahar province of Afghanistan. So if you could go there and you could bribe some money to the police, to the guards over there, or you could manage to speak with them, they might have let you enter to the Quetta province of Pakistan. I don't know if it's a state or a province, but they were letting you there. So my family booked a car. They went to Kandahar, and from Kandahar, they somehow, it was so difficult for them, but they somehow managed to enter Pakistan. And the only good thing was they all had visas in their passport, Pakistan visa, because a few days before that, my sister was sick, and they were trying to take her to Pakistan, so they all had visa for Pakistan. Only a few children, like small children, they didn't have, but it doesn't. So they managed to go to Pakistan, then to Islamabad. They went, and they went there, and I start emailing and calling Canadian authorities to let them enter, because when they were in Afghanistan, they received their permanent residency. They were still in Afghanistan, but they received a permanent residency from Canadian. And then the Canadian embassy, they really helped them there. They helped them because they were inside Pakistan illegally, basically. They had visa, but their passport didn't have entry of the country. There was not entry stamp. So then the Canadian embassy and the IOM, they helped them to somehow, like the Canadian was giving them the visa, that was not a problem, but then leaving the Islamabad airport without having the entry of Pakistan was impossible. For that, then IOM had to prepare all this documentation for them to basically go. Even one of the IOM authorities went with them to the airport to help them get into plane, because they were not allowed to leave Pakistan, because they were not legal basically there. But luckily they managed to leave the country and go to Canada.
I'm just I'm just amazed at the story you just shared and how incredibly complicated it was just to have a chance to leave the country and be able as a whole family to have a chance to start a new life in on your terms. But we've touched on a lot of things during this whole conversation, and I just want to reiterate one point. This is a highly political conversation, and it has a lot of political subtext. But at the end of the day, it's neither about whatever faith or political beliefs you may have. At the end of the day, it's about the individuals that actually have these experiences right now. And I just cannot put myself in your position. I can maybe try to imagine how that would feel like, but I just have to ask you, in 2021, when everything you just shared was happening, when you're, well, pretty much technically stranded in Geneva, because I'm not sure if that was necessarily an option to go back to Afghanistan. How did that feel like?
I was devastated, believe me. Like I didn't know what happened, because it happened so quickly. I was like, what's happening? Why this? If we would have had any idea that this would happen, my family would have left Afghanistan prior to Taliban coming. They had Pakistan visa. They would be in Pakistan at least. That was better than at that point being, yes, of course, nothing happened in terms of the fact that in media nothing happened. But inside country, a lot happened because uh, uh, I know it's a very political thing to say, but media in Afghanistan is being controlled at the moment. My aunt was a journalist, and we know how much the media is controlled at the moment. They are not allowed to say certain things because if they say it, they are risking their life. Even at that point, when the Taliban come, the country, what was happening, it was not actually what was showing on the TV because the media was being controlled and they were not allowed to really show the actual things. Like the local media was being controlled and the international media was scared because the person who is inside the country, they don't know what will happen to them. So I was actually devastated. I was so scared. Like I went for like I remember one of these days that I was sending all these emails and emails and emails, and no one was responding. I even started having these interviews with like Indian media and all of these other medias, trying to ask them for help to help my family leave the country any way possible. They just help them to go out of the country, and I asked for all these journalists and international media if they could help, and I was also scared that when I'm sharing this strong political opinion, it might affect my family and they might find my family. Of course, they cannot do anything with me, but they might find my family and what will be. So I was doing all these interviews, but then I was asking these media channels that you could blur my face, please, or you could just do something for my, like, just I don't want to be shown because of my family. It's not that I personally am here, I'm safe, but my family is not safe. So you just blur my face because no one see, or don't say my name because my last name is my family's last name. So it could be like they could be found or there could be anything. So like I was just like I had this email sending to all these organization and asking for help, and no one was responding. And I was calling, emailing, and everything, but I was not receiving any call. And I started screaming and crying at my room. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any sleep. I would be behind my laptop from 1 o'clock, like like from uh, until one a.m. from like 4, 5 a.m. until 1 a.m. every day for like 5, 6 days consecutively, just trying to. I send emails to any organization, to any embassy that I could have imagined. I even called Netherlands embassy and I asked them because they had an evacuation plan and I asked them, can you please evacuate my family from Afghanistan? And then I will take them to Switzerland. You don't have to take them to Netherlands, but just because you have an evacuation plan, you just bring them until Netherlands. I will take them back to Switzerland. I called the German embassy. I called France embassy. I was also very lucky that I had all these very supportive friends that I have at the moment. They were from different European countries, like they were from France, Italy, and on behalf of me, most of them start sending emails to their embassies and even sending their IDs and passport asking for help for my family because those countries had a very broad and big evacuation plans and they had people that they were evacuating and they had their planes going to the country, so they were asking them, can you help? Even one of my friends, she's Canadian, she was my roommate, and she sent her passport and everything here in Switzerland to the Canadian embassy and asking for help for my family.
Sincerely sorry that's something that you had to experience, and I'm sorry that is a reality that people have to actually deal with. I hope by shedding light on your actual experiences, we might be able to at least make it a little bit more known what it actually like, because we talk a lot about the politics and what's happening at the macro level, but I think we're kind of missing what's happening at an individual level. And at an individual level, there's been a lot of changes, and I think we're playing around this topic, but I think we should seriously dive into why it was such a big deal when the government changed and what it actually meant for people in the country and especially for women and the rights of women. Can you maybe share a little bit about what were the changes since 2021 in Afghanistan?
One of the considerable change is the fact that women are not allowed to go to school. Women are not allowed to work. Women are not allowed to do basically anything. They are just uh, inside their homes. They don't know. They don't do anything. That's one of the very considerable changes. And the fact that you say that the Taliban are like inside, uh, why there was like this much, the change was why like the people were not really accepting the fact that this change was happening because of their history, like the Taliban history in Afghanistan, the fact that they were in Afghanistan for 5 years, and people know that, like a lot of people were at that time and they know what was happening. And after that, for 20 years, they, I had the same conversation yesterday with one of my friends, and I was like, for 20 years they killed us. They had all these attacks and everything, and they killed us for 20 years. And for 20 years, if all offices, all international organizations where I even work, they all had bankers. And they were all ready for the fact that if they are being attacked by any suicide bombers or anyone, so they could put their staff inside those bunkers. So that fear that I experience every day, unlike me, thousands of other Afghans, and it is because of them. They were the reason that we were having those fears and those sort of experiences. The fact that we were scared that we will lose our rights, especially women, they know that they will lose all their rights and their, like, they come and the first thing they did was like introducing this whole new sort of clothing structure. I don't know, the whole new clothing thing that you have to wear this type of clothes to go out or to be even outside or to be even like for example in school or anywhere, because at start there were a few schools, at least the university were open and they were people that were going to the university, so they're like you have to wear this specific. And as I mentioned at the start of our talk, like in Afghanistan, the women and the girls and boys schools are separated. So I don't understand, because in girls' school in Afghanistan, the teachers are also women, and it's not like a, like there is very rare that in girls' school there will be a man teaching. At least in school, in the school that I studied, it was all women, starting from the principal until the last person in the school. The only people who were like men, it was the security guard in front of the door that were like helping uh, them to helping the women like to go to school, and they close the door and all of these things. That was the only person in the whole school that was a man, and the whole school was a woman's school. So there was never this fact that it's not conservative enough, because it was already very conservative. So there was no point. That was basically the fact that women are not allowed to do. And for me, it's quite surprising because for them, the most important thing in a government is women. And I sometimes laugh about the fact that I'm like, if there weren't be any women in Afghanistan, what will be the topic that Taliban will discuss then at that time? Because that's the most important thing for them. How does the woman dress? Where does the woman go? What does the, like they are not allowed to go to any park. They are not allowed to go to outside like at certain things. not even taxis are stopping for women to pick them up if they are alone. What they are wearing, how they are going outside, how like everything for why they are going to school, why they are going to university, closing the university doors for women, closing the school doors for women, not letting them to work. Even recently, they start asking UN to not let women work. And I read this UN Women statement that was about this topic, that the UN Women released a statement and they were like, no, we are not accepting this and women should be allowed to. So for them, it's not important that 90% of the population is dying because of hunger. There is no food. People are dying because of hunger. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that a woman is going, working, and making some money and helping her family to eat. Families like my family, where we don't have man, how we are supposed to eat? If my mother doesn't work, how we are supposed to eat? I don't have father, I don't have a brother. And I think that shouldn't be the requirement of living in a society, to have a man in your family. And that's basically the life at the moment for women.
That's just it's pretty hard to even wrap your mind around this whole situation if you never had to encounter such a situation beforehand. And as you stated previously, Afghanistan was already in a somewhat conservative position. But since then, as far as my research has enlightened me on this subject, there's been other changes, not only in women's rights, but also in how the media works and how the judicial system works and the education that you have access to. And I'm not sure if you, I suppose you still have some contacts in Afghanistan. Maybe some people that maybe even work in technology, or some women that used to work in technology. And I have to ask, how has their life inside the country changed in the past years?
I'll share. It's not a woman, but it's a male friend of mine. Last year, he was supposed to go to. He's at the moment. He was also part of the Internet Society of Afghanistan. So he was invited for the IGF in Addis Ababa, I think, last year in Ethiopia. So he received his visa, this like electronic visa, and he was supposed to go to the IGF last year. And he told me that they were not letting him to leave the airport. And he's a male. And when he went to the airport to leave, at first they were giving him all these excuses that your visa is e-visa and they will not allow you with this and all of these things. And there were like so many excuses for him to just leave the country. And he said it was very difficult because I asked him that this year in Japan, the Japan IGF, is he coming? And he was like, last year it was a very difficult, it was extremely difficult for me to go to Ethiopia. I don't know if I will be able to go to the Japan IGF this year because I don't even know if they will let me to leave the airport. Because last year I have to like call a lot of my contacts, a lot of these people to just let me leave the airport. And I also know that for women, for example, they are not letting also women, even if they are going, for example, having these visas for a lot of these countries to leave, they cannot leave. They are from the airport. They are like, no, you cannot leave. You have to go back. So this is one of the things that they are like not a lot about it, but they are not letting people to leave. I have another friend. He is there. He had a big business. He was in entrepreneurial things, and his business did really good. He was in telecom and these things. And it has been like since the start of Taliban, he's trying to leave, but what they did, he seized his accounts, and they are telling him, if you leave, we are not giving you any of your money or investments that you did. And he's basically stuck in the country because he had all this investment on all that money in the country, and he had to somehow manage and stay in the country and still work, although he wants to leave, but he cannot leave.
That's a lot. That's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to even try to comprehend that that would be possible, but sadly it is possible, and sadly that is reality that some people are right now actually dealing with. In such a situation, most often than not, the young, bright people such as yourself will most often leave the country, leaving a huge hole, huge, resulting in a huge level of brain drain in the country. When that happens, the country doesn't go all that well in the near future. But for the technological landscape that we talked about earlier, I just have to ask, were there some changes in how people use technology? In history so far, we've seen that technology has been used for um, helping our citizens. And you've talked about your conversations that you've had with people that are still in the country. But I have to wonder, given the propensity towards imposing a particular view on the media and not allowing particular types of contents, either via particular acts toward journalists, which uh, take take another view compared to the government. Have there been any changes in the online landscape of Afghanistan? Have there been any limitations in terms of individual access to the internet? Have there been any changes in what you can, where you can go online or what you can access?
They arrested a few YouTubers that were in Afghanistan. They were arrested, and for days, the families didn't know what happened to them. For example, one of these guys that were having this fashion YouTube that he was showing the Afghani clothes and everything, and like he had like some females also having these basically some fashion shows, like having, and he had a YouTube channel. He was arrested. Uh, he was arrested from his home, and then after like 10 days, no one know for 10 days what happened to him. And after 10 days, he come back, and he made a video back in his YouTube channel, and he apologized for everything that he was doing for the fashion shows. And surprisingly, no one know why he apologized. Maybe like my assumption personally is that he was threatened and he was asked to do those apologies. Basically, he was forced to do that. He might have been beaten like I don't know. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for him. And then he had to do this apology and say, I'm so sorry for all my contents. They were not really good. They were not good for the society, and all of these things. And he said, I'm safe. Nothing has happened to me. They didn't do anything to me. Like, yes, they took me, but they didn't do anything to me. And I'm good. Everything is good. That's all. And that was the video. So, like him, a lot of other people were arrested because of their social media and everything, and the same thing has happened to them. And secondly, internet cost in Afghanistan is very high. It has always been a very high, like of course, uh, compared to the income of a family, it's a very high cost. It's it because we cannot really compare it with Western countries because the income is also higher, and in Afghanistan the income is not that much, and then the internet cost has always been very high in Afghanistan. So to begin with, they didn't have that. Afghans like access to internet was not as easy. Of course, there were youth and these people that they always had access to internet. They would find some ways, like offices, and all of them always had, or they will buy mobile data or these things that they somehow managed to have like access. But now even the poverty itself is having a huge effect on the uh, internet access. So like not a lot of people at the moment are having internet access because it costs. They don't have money to begin with to even buy that subscription or to buy that mobile data or to buy anything like to have internet. Secondly, the fact that people are being threatened. If you do anything a little bit out of context, like a little bit out of the thing that you say something about Taliban or you share something, and they figure out who you are, you will be arrested. They will come on, they will just arrest you, and you will disappear for like a few days, and then you will come back, and no one knows what happened to you. And that time that you disappear, if you talk about that time, what happened, you're still inside the country, and any thing could happen again. So they basically has to like just say, okay, everything was good. They didn't do anything to me. And each one of them, when they are coming back after this arrest that's happening, and they are coming back, the same thing is happening. It's like a cycle. They are coming and then they are making this video and then they are saying, I'm sorry and nothing happened to me. I'm safe. Everything is good. And basically, that's the cycle. And these a lot of these YouTubers or these people who were having social media accounts, they had the same experience. It's happening, and they have to then be careful about what they are posting. And now they are not really posting that much because they are scared they could be arrested at any moment.
I can imagine, given that those people have been arrested in one capacity or another, uh, there were actual attempts to speak up about what was happening or what is happening in the country. My question would be, have there been any protests, like public protests about what is happening within the country?
Actually, if you remember, after Taliban come, there were like a group of women that they were doing these protests. Like a lot of women were doing these protests, and there were a lot of online campaigns also from a lot of these influential Afghans that were around the world, and they were starting these campaigns and doing all of these things. But what happened to those women is I don't know if you know those women who were doing the protest. Most of them were arrested for like there were some of them like there were a few videos also that a few of them while the knocks started happening on their doors at the middle of the night and someone was coming behind their doors and knocking and everything, so they made these videos at that moment, the horror and everything, and they posted them. So most of them were arrested, and then the same thing happened, they disappeared for some time. Most of those women after the arrest come and apologize, and they one of the things that they said was that we were organized by one of someone from outside the country, and actually Taliban are not doing anything wrong. They are basically doing everything good. They are proper. They Nothing is happening. It's just that we were given some money from some outside community, and that's why we were protesting, but nothing was happening. And then we were locked in a certain house or something, and then from that house that we were locked in, um, Taliban rescued us and they helped us and they basically did all of this. The Taliban were the one who helped us, and they said all of these things after being in Taliban prison basically for like 10 to 20 days. So no one knows actually what happened to them. One of these females that I know, I don't know her personally, but I know some people that know her. So I heard some of the stories that a lot had happened to her. And one of the reasons that she come and apologized was because she didn't have any other option, basically, because they like they beat her really bad, like really, really badly.
In such a context, again, it is extremely sad from an individual perspective. Whatever faith or political take we may have on this whole thing, we can all agree there's one document that was signed by most of the countries of the world called the Declaration of Human Rights, which is currently not being respected, given maybe the saddest part of everything I've learned from this whole context. There's not even a chance to get an education anymore, and that may be the thing hurting everything the hardest, because girls now, there was this case that you're talking about, that women are no longer allowed in transnational organizations such as the United Nations. But before that, I think a year ago or 2 years ago, women are not even allowed to finish university anymore and even go to school. Like, school, just basic stuff which we take for granted in our Western world, but it's a right that is not being enforced in some parts of the world. From my research, I learned about some initiatives to do education underground and even technological education for women underground. From your experience and from what you know, do you happen to know about any such initiatives, and can you happen to share anything on this?
Actually, I know a few. Basically, if I go a little to the back, when the first time Taliban came, the same thing happened. Um, I remember I was 4 years old, I think. UN had some of these, I think it was UNICEF. They had some of these underground courses, for example, that were basically at someone's house, and you had to go to that person's house and you have to study. And because the risk was so big, first for the person who is hosting these courses, and second for the children that are going, especially the girls, young girls, to go there, that UNICEF started giving food to the people who are going there. So whoever sent their children there, the UNICEF was giving them bread. So like if your girl is coming here, we are giving you food. And for example, if like also to the person who is hosting in their house, they were giving them a lot of money to have them in their house. And when I was 4 years old, my mother has a lot of education. She studied 2 universities, and for her, education is like basically the most important thing. And she always wanted us to study to the best possible. That like as much as we want to study, she always said, "I will be there to support you. You go study. I am there for you to support you." And she was the most like I'm so lucky having her because she was very supportive. And I was 4 years old. My mother would used to send me to those schools, and my father was not happy about that. And the reason behind that was because there was a lot of human trafficking at that time. So, like the kids were being kidnapped out of their houses, and then they will take them, not basically human trafficking, but the organ trafficking. So, they were like take them, and then after a few days, their dead bodies will be found somewhere without some of their body's organs. So, some body organs will be taken out of their bodies, and then their dead bodies will. So, my father didn't wanted me to go there, and the reason was that if something happened to her, if someone kidnapped her, if something happened to her. So what will happen? And my mother was like, I will take her and I will sit behind the school there, wait for her until she finished, and then I will take her back home. And my mother used to do that. So she will take me, she will sit there behind the school for as long as I was in that school. And then she will take, and I remember that school was in basement. So we had to go to the basement of that house to go and study there. And my mother will be sitting on the street waiting for me to finish and come back and go with her. So it has been always like this with Taliban. And at the moment, because the technology has improved much bigger, so some of these people who are inside the country or outside the country, they are basically hosting these online sort of courses. So they are trying to gather some funding from different places. They are sending that funding to country, for example, for their internet connection. Like, we are buying you internet, you come online, and then there are Afghans or international people from different areas of the world that coming on Zoom on different calls and giving basically education online to them for their home.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard about, and it's absolutely fascinating to even think when we were growing up that that would even be possible. And I'm just extremely happy to learn that there are such initiatives, again, not taking any political stand, but just from an individual perspective, offering on a volunteer basis the opportunity for education. And I think better than me making a statement, I think it would be more appropriate to give you the floor on that. You are also nowadays part of the Afghan Students Association in Switzerland, where you are also trying to share Afghan culture. And after everything we've shared in this call, I think the best, most appropriate way to sum up our conversation would be to give you the floor and ask you, what would you like people to know about Afghan women?
So, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity that you gave me. It, it's great because I think a lot of people know that what is happening in the country in general, but they do not know what is an individual perspective of the things that are happening inside the country. So this is a great opportunity because this gives an individual perspective, especially for people in technology, for women in STEM, for anyone who is in technology. What is life like for people who work all these years for technology in Afghanistan, for entrepreneurial activities, anything related to, to have initiatives, to have different things, especially for women, how it is. So thank you so much for that. Second of all, coming to the question about the what I want the world to know about Afghanistan, I would basically say that Afghanistan is a beautiful country. We have a lot of history. We have a lot of culture. Uh, we were one of the ancient civilizations of the world. We were like basically part of the Persian Empire. We were part of the Indus Valley civilization. We we have a lot of history in Afghanistan. We have a lot of culture. Each part of Afghanistan, it's a very diverse country. There is a lot of languages. There is a lot of culture. Each part of my country is beautiful. There is so much nature. It's full with nature and these valleys and beautiful mountains that we are having. The natural beauty of the country, the culture of the country, which I think a lot of people doesn't know about, and they all basically know about the war and the things that are happening, but they don't really know about how beautiful our dances are, how beautiful and colorful our clothes are, how beautiful our songs are, how beautiful our music is, how amazing our valleys are, how beautiful the mountains are, how much history we have. We had a lot of international students coming to my country and studying there, especially the Kabul University. It was a very famous university in Asia and basically in the world. But now we are at a point when we were hosting the world to come and study in our university. At the moment, we are at the point that we cannot even host our own people, our own girls to study. So I would say just look at Afghanistan from a different lens. Look at Afghanistan from the lens of culture, nature, all of these things. It's a very beautiful country. Yes, we are struggling at the moment politically, but I am really hopeful that it will end and then the whole world will see how beautiful and how awesome Afghanistan is.
Lima, on this show, we have a tradition where before we finish up this interview, I have to ask you one last question. If you could remove just one boundary, only one thing that is holding your ecosystem back, what would you remove and why?
If I could remove one thing, that would be the barrier of education in my country. I would really want the youth, the people of my country to have the same experiences that any other child in the world is having, to study, to thrive, to have the same experience that any other person in this world is having. I would love to do that because education is the future. If our children are educated now, we will have a good future. But if we stop education now, we will never have a good future. And it's education that is giving us everything that that we ever dreamed of as a country, as people. So that will be the only, like, if I could, I have a lot of things that I would love to remove if I could, but the only one, if I have to choose, that will be the education. Because if a society is educated, the country thrives. If the society is not educated, the country goes downward and the same mentality will stay within the
I absolutely love that answer, and I couldn't be more grateful for the time you had to offer and to the fact that you are actively encouraging the conversation on what's happening and the fact that you are actually vulnerable. And more importantly, the fact that you had the courage to speak about your own experiences, about the life you've known and how it was for you. And for that, I am sincerely grateful. Thank you once again, Lima, for coming here. And I learned a lot, and I'm sure other people have learned a lot from your experience. And once again, thank you so very much for your vulnerability, and see you very soon. You've been listening to the Audacious Ecosystem, the show where we learn together what it takes to make an ecosystem great from the leaders in the organizations around us.